Good morning, everybody. You are in the right room, hopefully, or the right Zoom meeting. This is the Forest Landowner Foundation Forest Carbon University webinar series, and today's webinar focus is with NCX. We're going to give a few minutes here, a minute or two, to let everybody get into the Zoom meeting. So just sit tight, and we'll be with you in a second.
Melinda, it doesn't look like I can share my screen.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to do that. You should be a panelist. Michelle, can you check into that?
Oh, now it's working.
Okay. I was going to say, try it now.
Showing up okay on your end?
Yes.
All right, perfect. While we wait for everybody to join, just want to say hello. My name's Lillian Hogan. I lead the landowner success team at NCX, and I'm really excited to share more about our program with you guys today.
Yeah, and if you'd like to put where you're from, and if you're a landowner or a forest consultant in the chat, it's always appreciated. So we get a feel, but also so others who are joining know who's here. So open that chat up and start telling us where you're from. All right, well, let's get going, because I know from past webinar series, we usually get really good questions and conversation, but also let me tell you a little bit why we're doing the Forest Carbon University. We are the Forest Landowners Foundation. I think many of you are familiar with us and perhaps have even joined some of our other webinar series throughout the Forest Carbon University program. But our goal here is to, as the voluntary carbon market continues to evolve and increases with interest, we want to make sure that landowners have the information that they need to make informed decisions on whether or not entering into the carbon market is right for their forest management, for their forest ownership. And we did a survey of forest landowners asking them what did they know about the voluntary carbon market, what was confusing about it, what gave them hesitation. And based on that, we talked to the different market providers and let them know, this isn't your generic 101, who is NCX? Yes, we're going to cover that. But what we really want to do is get to the questions that you have about each of the different voluntary carbon program providers. So today is your opportunity. If you have a question or on anything dealing with NCX or the carbon market in general, because Lillian deals in this day in and day out, and I do as well, so we can certainly answer your questions. But I would encourage you, put it into the chat or wait till the end. We will open it up for questions. But that's what today is all about, making sure you have the information to gauge your interest or to answer any questions you just have about where is the carbon market going, and specifically with NCX. Their model is different than all of the other ones out there. It really is geared more towards forest landowners who own and manage timberlands. And so I'm really interested and excited to have Lillian on today and to hear more about their program and how it's evolving. So Lillian, with that, you're on.
Great. Thank you so much, Melinda and Michelle, for helping coordinate this Forest Carbon University series. As I mentioned when I started, my name's Lillian Hogan. I lead the landowner success team at NCX, and I am very excited to share more about our program and answer questions that you all have about the Natural Capital Exchange. So without further ado, let's dive in. You may be wondering why we do what we do in the first place. To answer that, I'd like to share a story about the Evans family. Margaret's great-great-grandfather moved to Newton, Mississippi back in 1838, and the home he built still stands. Over the years, many descendants settled in nearby towns, establishing families and operating farms. They've grown anything from corn to hay to cotton and timber timber was the most valuable asset for them. Over the years, Margaret and her sisters learned to be good stewards of the land and have seen firsthand the impact of climate change. Both her and her sister lost their home in Hurricane Katrina, and every year since then, they dodge increasingly erratic hurricane seasons, but hope to be able to pass the family land onto the next generation. So after in-depth research of forest carbon programs, they enrolled in NCX to support the upkeep of the trees that they love and keep them standing. Margaret's family history and motivation to participate in NCX is unique to her and her family, but very much on par with what we've heard from hundreds of landowners that we've either spoken with or are actively participating in the Natural Capital Exchange. Our program has been designed to provide an alternative revenue stream to support landowners of all sizes and the natural capital that they offer, that we, society as a whole, benefit from. So the long-term mission of NCX includes compensating landowners for maintaining or implementing other best management practices that help in sustaining water quality, preserving biodiversity and wildlife habitats, and mitigating fire risk. We're starting with forest carbon, but that's not our end destination. So what is it that makes NCX unique? As Melinda mentioned, our program is unlike some of the more traditional forest carbon options available to landowners. Our program offers no cost to participate. There's no minimum acreage required, and it's only a 1-year deferral commitment. There's no other program on the market right now that's been designed to eliminate these barriers that are commonly found in those more traditional programs. We're able to achieve this through leveraging the technology that we've developed called BaseMap and meticulously designing our methodology to support this framework. As you can see here, our participating landowners and coverage continues to grow. Our spring 2021 cycle was the first one that we launched, and it was open to landowners in the Southeast US. We had 119 accepted participants. Now we currently have over 3,800 landowners actively participating in one of our quarterly program cycles, and landowners across the country are eligible to participate in NCX. We also have a pilot program that we launched in Canada recently. So our program is continuing to expand, and we're excited about the opportunity to interact with more and more landowners and forestry partners as our program grows. So what I've got here is a short demo showing just how easy it is to sign up on the NCX platform and request your free assessment. There isn't any sound here, it's just me going through the process. It's a very simple 3-step process. So here you'll provide your contact information. A working email is critical because that's how all of our notifications are sent. And you'll provide some property details. And then lastly, you will enter your property on our interactive map. Here you see I entered just a county in Indiana, which is where I currently reside. But on our map, you can use the select parcels feature to overlay county tax records. So it's really easy to identify your property. And then once you've completed that step, you'll see 3 checkboxes that you'll have to acknowledge, followed by clicking the request eligibility assessment button. So that's it. It's very easy, straightforward, and we will notify you via email once your eligibility report is available. So again, just another reminder that it's really important that when you create an account, you use a good working email that you regularly check so that you are kept informed as your registration evolves. There are 3 primary requirements to participate in the Natural Capital Exchange. The first is that the individual requesting an assessment must be the legal owner or the manager of the property that's being enrolled. The second is, as a participant, you must enroll all of the land that resides under your ownership. This is a critical component to our methodology and helps eliminate activity shifting leakage an element that all carbon project developers must account for. It is not a requirement that harvest be deferred across all acres, but we do have to assess your cumulative land holdings. And lastly, sellers have to acknowledge that the credits that they're selling reflect the volume that could reasonably be harvested in the next 12 months. If you meet the eligibility requirements that I mentioned on the previous slide, and want to join the thousands of landowners that are actively participating in NCX, we invite you to request an eligibility report, as you saw on the demo that I included. Our eligibility reports reflect the volume of timber that we estimate as likely to come off of the property in the next 12 months. Those are represented in harvest deferral credits, which you see right here. Those are the units that we use at NCX. Harvest deferral credits, or HDCs, as we typically refer to them as, they can be sold on our marketplace in exchange for deferring that timber harvest activity. Through our assessment process, we evaluate two primary categories. The first one is standing inventory as measured by our base map technology. And then the second is harvest risk. Standing inventory is comprised of our estimates of size and species of timber across all forested acres enrolled. For harvest risk, we look at predominantly market dynamics in the region, as well as ease of harvest on the property. So some of the factors that we look at include property size, ownership type, proximity to mills, terrain and slope. All of that impacts how easy it is to actually conduct a commercial timber sale. Through this, we're able to again estimate the property or the probability of harvest and the portion of carbon that would be removed through those activities, represented again by harvest deferral credits. So once you receive an eligibility report, you're able to immediately submit an offer to participate in our upcoming cycle. And then we will work hard behind the scenes to match you with a buyer that's willing to pay that price. So that's another element of our program that's unique. Landowners and foresters, if they're managing accounts on behalf of their clients, are able to determine the price at which they would need to be paid to defer harvest activity. And I'll go into that a bit more on the next slide. So we launched a new selling process this summer, and it included providing more market-driven data to support landowners in identifying the price at which they want to sell their credits for. Some of that market data includes a rolling trend for most recent 3-month and 6-month averages. So you can see what other participating landowners are paying, are selling their credits for, as well as the most recent price point that was accepted. We've also included offer examples that include formulas on how to calculate what an appropriate price would be based on either property taxes or estimated stumpage revenue. Both of those figures are ones that landowners commonly use as the metric at which they determine their break-even point. So we have two different examples using two different formulas, depending on what resonates most. And then we've also included an outstanding offers and bid graph to show what prices are being submitted on both sides of the marketplace. Again, to just offer as much visibility and information into the prices that landowners are selling their credits for, to help other participants make an informed decision around how they want to price their credits. So using all of this information, landowners will enter the price per credit, as you see in the screenshot here, and then the number of credits that they want to sell. This value column here updates according to those inputs that are provided. Once you have completed this step, you will then be prompted to finalize the contact information associated with your account, and then you will be taken to DocuSign, where our seller agreements are housed. Once you sign the seller agreement, that is what actually finalizes your offer. Through this new process, we conduct weekly matching events. And if a participant's offer is accepted, they are then notified on Friday that they have been accepted into that upcoming cycle. So slightly different than how our cycles have operated historically, but again, the intention here is to really add a lot of market data so that landowners can make informed decisions around how they want to structure their offer and have additional flexibility that wasn't available through our previous pricing structure. So who buys these credits, you might wonder? Historically, we've seen really strong demand from Fortune 500 companies that have ambitious sustainability targets. Included on this slide are some of those organizations that have purchased credits to date. We're continuing to grow our buyer base by reaching out to customers ranging in size, industry, and location. So very much expect this to continue to evolve, but these are the buyers that we've worked with so far. This summer, as some of you may be aware, we changed the process that we expect to use for third-party certification to one that better recognizes the value of short-term carbon storage in forests, which is, how our program is designed, as well as modern measurement techniques that offer increased precision for buyers and sellers. We're currently working with academics, advisors, NGOs, as we continue our work on the certification front, and very much plan to share more information as those conversations continue to evolve in the coming months. So what happens if your offer is accepted? If your offer is accepted, you then enter the 1-year harvest deferral period, also known as the performance period. As the performance period comes to a close, we get to work on calculating your closing measurements. Those are done remotely, just like our initial eligibility reports. Although if a landowner's property was cruised, which is something that is baked into our program process, it'll be cruised again at the end of the performance period. Once those measurements are taken and compiled, we generate what we refer to as a results report, and that's what you see shown on this slide. This document outlines the number of credits that were accepted and the number of credits that were delivered at the end of the performance period, and the total contract value. So we pay landowners at the end of the performance period based on the number of credits that are delivered. So the total contract value is also included in the results report that we generate. We do have an option for landowners who may disagree with our closing measurements. They can issue a formal results review within 14 days, and we'll take a closer look at their specific assessment results. So, we rely very much on the technology and the assessment process that we've established, but we also want landowners to bring it to our attention if they feel like, they delivered more credits than what was outlined on their results report. So some additional flexibility is baked in there. Once the results report has been approved, payments are issued based on the preferred payment method specified in a landowner's account. We support ACH or direct deposit, as well as check deliveries. There is a wire transfer option, but it comes with a cost. So we very much encourage landowners to opt for either check or direct deposit. So from start to finish, here are the 5 key milestones of our program, beginning with enrollment and ending with payment issuance. Also included are the timelines associated with this. I've used our fall 2022 cycle as an example. Here you can see that the performance period is for 1 year, but the timeline extends beyond that. And this is because it takes our internal engineering teams time to compile the closing measurements and generate results reports. Landowners, though, are under no obligation to defer harvest activity beyond this 1-year commitment. That's really what we're measuring. It just takes some time for us at the end of the cycle to compile those results reports and get payments delivered. So now that you know more about NCX, how it's designed for landowners, there are 4 frequently asked questions that I'd like to address before opening it up to questions that are top of mind to you all. The first one is, how much will a landowner get paid? This is the most frequently asked question that we get. It's a little difficult to know, though, without a landowner submitting their property information. There are a number of factors that influence financial potential, to include rotation age, species mix, historical harvest activity. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, ease of harvest is something that we are very much including in the assessment process. So things like slope and terrain impact how easy it is to harvest. If you've got, a relatively flat pine plantation in the south, it's much easier to harvest than if you live in the Pacific Northwest and you've got really rocky terrain. And lastly, local timber economics. So how close are you to mills is going to impact whether or not it's profitable for you to conduct a timber harvest, which will influence your eligibility report results. Things like mill demand, what are the product classes that are being accepted into the mills that are close to the property that you have enrolled. That also influences the price that you could earn through participating in the natural capital exchange. Most landowners who own less than 1,000 acres typically earn between 1 and 1.5 harvest deferral credits per acre. And historically, our cycles have cleared anywhere from $7 to $12 per credit. So for those of you who have, a property in mind, whether it's your own or again, a client's that you think would be a good fit for our program, hopefully that ballpark estimate allows you to kind of forecast what you may be able to earn through participating in our program. My recommendation is always to create an account, request an assessment. Again, totally free. You're not under any obligation to participate in our program just because you get an eligibility report. But once you get that eligibility report, you will be able to take the number of harvest deferral credits and really calculate how much you could earn if your offer is accepted. The next FAQ that we get pretty frequently from participants are what management activities can landowners do while participating in NCX? So the natural capital exchange is really designed to incentivize landowners to defer harvest activity. Our intention is really to develop a flexible program that allows landowners to manage their forest land as they see fit. Activities such as pine straw collecting, prescribed burns, and even invasive species removal are all permitted activities. Through our remote assessment, we evaluate the total standing carbon on a given property. So if you're planning on removing woody biomass that is greater than 2 inches in diameter, you should reduce the number of credits that you sell to account for that. Generally speaking, though, management activities that don't require any sort of removal of timber are permitted through our program. We have a comprehensive list of what types of management activities are permitted, but these are the 3 that we get asked most often about. Another question that we hear frequently is, how does the program handle natural disasters? So if a natural disturbance does occur during the 1-year performance period, and this results in a landowner not meeting their deferral commitment, no payments will be made for those associated harvest deferral credits. We have implemented a reduced payment per credit structure for deliveries that fall below 95%. So we actually have a little bit of a buffer where if a landowner delivers more than 95% but less than 100, they'll still receive payment for the full contract value. But for deliveries that fall below 95%, then there's a reduction that takes effect. If a natural disaster does occur on a landowner's property, landowners will not be penalized further, and they will certainly not be barred from future participation in NCX cycles. I know this is something that, as we just recently saw with Hurricane Ida, unfortunately, natural disasters do occur, but we certainly don't want landowners to be penalized through participating in our program. We can just pay for the harvest deferral credits that are delivered. And the last one, will landowners be eligible to participate in other forest carbon programs after enrolling in NCX? And this one's a little bit tricky because, in short, it depends. Project developers like NCX are able to enact program requirements and rules at their discretion. So other organizations may elect to restrict or prohibit participation, either for a designated time horizon or just outright. It's something that we encourage landowners to consider when evaluating what type of program makes the most sense for them. How others choose to structure their program is something that is not within our control, but speaking on behalf of NCX, it is certainly not a restriction that we plan on implementing. And we expect to see registries evolve to support the type of flexibility that aligns with short-term harvest deferral commitments, because we see a real need and a real desire among landowners of all sizes to participate in something that does not require a decade plus long commitment. So our program, again, pays landowners to defer harvest activity for 1 year. Of course, we hope that landowners will elect to re-enroll in our program. But once that time horizon or that time commitment has been fulfilled, landowners have fulfilled their obligation with NCX. And in our opinion, they're under no obligation to continue deferring harvest activity and should be able to enroll in a subsequent cycle, whether that's with us or a different organization. So more will come, I'm sure, as conversations continue to unfold. As many of you are aware, this is a rapidly evolving space, and we're having conversations, as are other forest carbon project developers, to try and come to a consensus on how do we support landowners who want to participate in multiple forest carbon programs. So just to close out, the Natural Capital Exchange operates on quarterly program cycles that align with the seasons. Our winter 2022 cycle is open for enrollment through December 15th. You can visit landowners.ncx.com to get started with creating your account. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm happy to answer questions that you have about our program. I have our team mailbox here too. If you'd prefer to send us a message, we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you, Lillian. That was a great presentation, and you definitely dived into questions and areas that I didn't know, and definitely did a great job answering them. So now's the time to put your question into the chat and let us know. I see there is one here from a landowner in North Carolina. If I registered for this past cycle, do I need to register for the next bidding cycle?
Yeah, so the way that it works is if you requested an eligibility report for our fall cycle, for example, and you submitted an offer, but that offer wasn't accepted, you will need to request an updated eligibility report. And that's because the data sets, including our base map technology, they're updated on a regular cadence. So we require landowners to request a new eligibility report to make sure that the report that you receive is as up to date as possible. But all of your account information is still available. You can log into our platform through that same link displayed here with your email and password. And you'll be able to essentially just see that final page that I included in the demo with those 3 checkboxes. That's all you'll have to do. Just acknowledge those 3 and click the request eligibility assessment button.
So I think you answered the second part of Sunny's question, which is, if I have additional land to submit, does this have to be on a different request?
So it depends on whether or not that property is under the same ownership structure. So the way our program functions is landowners are required to enroll all of the property that they own. But if you own property outright, for example, and then you have an LLC with 2 different family members, those would actually constitute two separate ownership structures. So if you enrolled initially all of the property under your ownership, but did not include it all, then yes, you'll need to go back in and add those acres to your existing NCX account so that we can assess all of the land under that specific ownership structure.
Great. All right. If anyone has another question, type it in. I do not think we have the ability for you to unmute now, so just type it in. But while we're waiting to see if anyone has additional questions, I have one.
Sure.
You hit on this early on, and I've definitely been hearing a lot about this and reading a lot about this, which is the layering of a landowner's resources to add value to the price of their carbon credits. So if a landowner, I think you had a slide about biodiversity and water, and I know that there's a lot of work happening both within the carbon markets and different areas to figure out how we can monetize the benefits, the co-benefits. But currently, if a landowner is to submit a price that they want for their carbon, can they take into consideration, or does NCX help them through your software say, hey, your forest land is in a priority area, or you have this type of biodiversity, or we know your watershed contributes drinking water to this many residents of this county. Does NCX help with any of that? Or could a landowner have a discussion with NCX if they had that knowledge to say, hey, this is why my credits, I want to put a higher bid in for my credits?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and definitely something that we have seen gain a lot of traction. I was at the SAF National Convention in Baltimore last month, and there were so many discussions around biodiversity and natural capital more broadly, and how do we compensate landowners for the benefits that their land is providing society as a whole. We have dedicated teams at NCX that are working on expanding our program to support those other forms of natural capital. And it's very much something that we plan to include in our assessment process down the road. Right now, our program is still very much just focused on forest carbon, but it is something that we're actively working on. One of the things that we envision can be really powerful is being able to layer in, the forest carbon benefits with the water quality benefits with biodiversity, and then you get into really compensating landowners. Right now, we've got forest carbon, and it's great. It's very much center stage right now, but it is still just scratching the surface in some ways. So we're really excited that we have designed the Natural Capital Exchange in a way to focus on these other forms of natural capital and ecosystem services down the road. And that's honestly in part why we changed our name from Sylvia Terra to the Natural Capital Exchange.
Right. I look forward to that happening and evolving. Another question we had from an anonymous attendee: does the age of the stand matter? How do you determine the harvest deferral credits for 20 years old stand versus a 35-year-old stand?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the age doesn't matter as much as the size of the timber and what is being accepted in the mills in your area. So through our base map technology, we're really estimating the total carbon at risk. And so we have a minimum threshold that we deem merchantable, which I believe is, I think it's 5 inches DBH, that we deem the bare minimum. And then we kind of refine that further based on what mill pressure looks like in a specific state or region to determine, how much of the property that you have enrolled do we deem merchantable or eligible to earn harvest deferral credits. So age isn't as much of a factor as size.
Great. Another thing you touched on was this, I think it's new for you guys, is your weekly matchups. Almost sounds like speed dating, if you will. Could you give us just a little more background on how do you go out and market these credits for these weekly buyers, sellers, and who are the people coming in or the companies, and how many generally, weekly is a lot. So I don't know, just would appreciate a little bit more background on how that process works in detail.
Yeah, definitely. So part of why we modified our selling process was to offer more flexibility to landowners. So what we did historically was we had a uniform price auction. So landowners submitted offers up to a certain point. We looked at all of those offers and we essentially plotted a supply and demand curve. And where those two lines intersected was deemed the market clearing price. So any landowner who submitted a price below that, they were accepted and everybody was paid the same rate. But as everybody on this call knows, like not all stands are equal. And so we wanted landowners to be able to have a little bit more flexibility in determining the price that they sell. And then we also, on the other side of the marketplace, saw tremendous interest from buyers who are interested in purchasing credits locally. So we've got somebody in our winter cycle that said, hey, we have a business in Pennsylvania and we want to support Pennsylvania landowners. So we're willing to pay a premium for those credits. And so by hosting weekly matching events, we're able to support both sides of the marketplace a little bit better than when we had just that uniform price auction. In terms of buyers, it ranges in size and in volume of credits that they want to purchase. We have a dedicated business development team that's working hard to bring on additional demand and demand that varies in size so that we can support those weekly matching events more consistently.
Great. Yeah, I love to see that there's local, people are trying to match up locally. I think that's great. We're seeing that in other areas too.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think I don't see any more questions in the Q&A chat box, and I think you did a very thorough job, as Lillian said. There's the email there. I would encourage you, to continue participating in our Forest Carbon University webinars, so you can become informed and see what program provider might match up for your needs or interest. This is ever evolving landscape, and we're really excited about it. So Lillian, thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who participated today. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yes,
Take care.
thank you so much. Bye.